Well, it's looking like the end of competitive Smash might be here. So if you haven't been on the internet at all today or just haven't seen anything, you might not have seen that Nintendo just kind of, sneakily slid something in there today and, kind of let us know that, they don't want to see Smash anymore, Now this is not directly, directed towards Smash, but we can all pretty much figure out what they're doing here. So for those of you that are watching this that may not know the whole history of Nintendo's relationship with Smash, I do have another video where I kind of talk a little bit more about it, specifically with the tournament called Evo. So definitely check that out if you kind of want to know more about it. But basically, it's been kind of a rocky relationship. It's actually been pretty bad overall. There's really been almost no positive interaction between like the competitive Smash community and Nintendo, which is kind of crazy because like the game Smash was created by Nintendo, so you would think there's some kind of relationship there, right? You want your games to do well, but it's just been pretty bad overall. And today they basically came out with these community tournament guidelines, which kind of detail guidelines that are going to be set in stone moving forward as of November 15th this year, as you can see right here, effective date, that are going to completely change the game, right? Like it's basically going to make tournaments as we know them right now, basically impossible to run. So what exactly does all this mean? Well, I'm gonna go ahead and break it down for you guys. I'm gonna give you the simple rundown here, and then we'll kind of look into some of the more details that maybe you didn't really notice on the surface, right? If you've seen this information, right, you probably know the big things here, but there might be some things that you haven't seen already, so I'm gonna go ahead and break that down for you. So basically it starts off by saying, we love the passion everybody has for Nintendo games. We love the community. We love to support individuals. All that nonsense. After that, they basically go on to say, in spirit of this, we're going to create some guidelines. They're going to be for hosting not-for-profit tournaments. In other words, we cannot host any tournaments that have, that are for profit. Which, I mean, that's kind of vague right there, but we'll get to that in just a second. Here it says that community tournaments may be operated by individuals, for individuals participating in these tournaments, and for individuals viewing tournaments, provided that these guidelines are followed. Tournaments can only have up to 200 participants for in-person tournaments, and even online tournaments are limited to 300 participants. That means your big tournaments like Coinbox, right, which have well over 300 people, not going to be allowed anymore. And that means in-person events like, smaller regionals, like I know Texas has a bunch of regionals that pop up, can only have up to 200 participants. After that, it's not allowed. These in-person tournaments can charge no more than $20 per person. Now, what is this $20 for, you might be asking? Is that just the, or the prize pot, there's usually like an entry fee, and then there's also like a venue fee on top of that, right? Well, no, this is like the shared thing right here, right? So basically this $20, you can use that towards covering the cost of the venue, covering the prizing, whatever you want it to be, but you cannot be charged more than $20 for these events. And let me tell you, when you're hosting bigger tournaments like regionals and things like that, there's a lot of costs to be accounted for most of the time, especially if you're renting out any kind of venue space, which is pretty much impossible to make up for that if you're only charging $20. Now, so far, before we get deeper into this, I just want to go ahead and say, locals, I feel like, are really not going to be affected by this, whatsoever. I mean, some of this stuff is going to kind of affect locals, but what we've talked about so far, not really going to affect it too much, right? Like, for me personally, in my city, our biggest local has like 80 people. It never maxes out to 200. So that's obviously not going to really be affected by this. But when we're talking about regionals, majors, and bigger tournaments in general, this is all stuff that comes into play. Now, this is the big one here. No prize may exceed a market value of $5,000 US. And also, a single organizer cannot offer the community more than $10,000 within a 12-month period. Now, that basically means that, for example, again, Coinbox, right? Basically a weekly tournament that pays thousands of dollars, right? That means over a 12-month period, that means over the course of a year, when you combine the coin boxes, it cannot pay out more than $10,000. And no single tournament like a coin box, can have more than $5,000. And from my understanding, in the entire prize pool, right? Not just like for one person. I think it's talking about like for the tournament in general. Spectators are limited to $15. I mean, that's nothing too crazy. Again, bigger events, that's where it kind of affects it more, but I mean, aside from that, it's not insane. Organizers collecting the fees must publicly disclose all accounting related to the costs of hosting the event. Now, this is something that I don't think is awful. Obviously, that involves a lot more work, a lot more transparency, but when you look for like, especially like a lot of non-profit organizations and things like that, I mean, that's all kind of public information that should be out there. So I don't necessarily hate this, but it is going to just create more of an inconvenience. And especially when you look at like smaller events, it just gets a little bit more complicated because sometimes people running that don't necessarily have the accounting background, you know what I mean? You might have to hire somebody for that. So it does kind of make things a little bit more complicated, but that's not like the worst thing out of this whole thing. And here's another big one. When hosting a community tournament, organizers may not receive goods, services, money, etc. from third parties as sponsors. No sponsors allowed there. And only with prior consent from participants can organizers monetize posting of videos, still images, etc. related to community tournaments on personal accounts in line with Nintendo game content guidelines for online video and information sharing platforms. The total amount of revenue a single organizer earns in a 12-month period through these activities should be no more than the equivalent of $10,000 US. Again, let me go ahead and break that down in simple terms from my understanding of this. Again, I could be wrong, but this is how I'm perceiving this. From my understanding, let's say somebody like Gimmer, right, the person in charge of VG Bootcamp, let's say that they host a tournament, right, and you know that tournament posts the online VODs, right, for that, right, and posts the online tournament sets, right. In order to do that, you have to gain consent from everybody that enters the tournament, which wouldn't be hard to do necessarily because you can kind of probably do that through like StartGG. I'm pretty sure there's like a checkbox you can check. But regardless, upload it to YouTube, right? And basically over the 12-month period, right, you're not allowed to make over $10,000 from those videos, you know, so that means YouTube monetization, you're getting paid for that, right? And you're uploading all these different sets, you know, from different tournaments or whatever. Basically, all that combined cannot equal more than $10,000. If it does, then you are out of compliance with these guidelines. So that means the only other option at that point would be to like what, demonetize your channel or stop uploading videos? I don't know. Also, the community tournament cannot be affiliated with Nintendo and makes no use of Nintendo trademarks or IP except as permitted by these guidelines. So basically you can't falsely imply that Nintendo is sponsoring your event. That's not too crazy. The names of community tournaments may not contain Nintendo trademarks or IP such as Nintendo's company name, logo, product, or service names such as game titles, names adopted from games, such as character names. So in other words, tournaments like Rise and Grind can't really have the sandbag from Smash as its big, you know, logo. That means tournaments like that, like Gommel, right, which have Randall the Cloud, not really allowed because that's from a Nintendo game. It's a Nintendo IP. You're basically not able to use any Nintendo IPs like to promote the name of your tournament or to, you know, it talks about it more later, but like around the venue, you can't really have things up like that. So kind of, you know, you can't really have an identity for your tournament. Also, pirated or modified versions of Nintendo games may not be used for tournaments. That's kind of common sense, right? But at the same time, it kind of officially bans like online Melee tournaments. I mean, Melee is really getting screwed over by all this. Not just Melee though, because right here it says games with online play must use the online gameplay services and or servers officially provided by Nintendo. That means the latency mod, all that stuff that people use for Ultimate, also not allowed anymore for any kind of online tournaments. Also, anytime you host a tournament, you have to disclose Nintendo's not a sponsor of the event. Again, nothing too crazy there. It kind of just makes sense. Honestly, a lot of this stuff, really, you know, I don't have necessarily a problem with. Well, I shouldn't say a lot of this stuff. Some of this stuff I really don't have a problem with, right? Like this right here, not terrible. Some of the other stuff we talked about, not horrible, right? It kind of just makes sense for some of those things. It's just, there's so much to break down in this. There's so many, you know, little things that just make it difficult to run anything, which makes this whole entire, it makes everything awful pretty much, is what it does. There's just so many little random things that if you read in here, it's like right here, for the use of any intellectual property rights owned by a third party, organizers must obtain permission from those rights owners separately from these guidelines. Like, I wonder if that means, I saw something about it on Twitter. I didn't read like through everything here, but people were saying like with TLC characters, I don't think it goes that far into it, but hey, I mean, maybe this is what that's implying, who knows? This right here though, this is like the game changer right here, right? So in addition, Nintendo games may not be used for community tournaments that, you know, you kind of scroll down a little bit here, right? Past all this common sense stuff. Have sponsors or that advertise or promote any entity, products, or services. Basically what that means, and from my understanding, once again, that basically means that we can't have sponsors at tournaments, and that basically means that tournaments can't run. I mean, here's the thing about tournaments, right? Realistically, they're ran by people that decide to run them, and these people decide to run them because they can run them because they have sponsors, and without sponsors, they don't have the money to run them, and especially when you're limited on how much you can charge somebody for the tournament, just can't run the event. It's just not logistically possible unless you have a bunch of money to just throw out there and get nothing in return. And even then, you can't even have more than 200 people. So, you know, it's like a revolving circle of just impossibility right there. And of course right here it says involve anything that Nintendo deems inappropriate. That literally means anything. And that's like a basis of the guidelines, right? Down here's all the frequently asked questions. It's going to talk more into it. We're going to check that out in just a second. But this is kind of just, you know, a rundown of most of what they gave us today, which again, changes a lot of things. It changes, you know, entrant limits. It changes prize pools. It changes the possibility of sponsors, right? There's a lot of things that are changing. Let's see what some of these frequently asked questions are about. So right here, Q1, it just asks, what is a community tournament considered? I mean, it's common sense, really. It's using a Nintendo game, tournament organized by people, non-profit. Yeah, basic common sense right there. This right here for Q2 is what I was talking about earlier. Basically asks, can you use Nintendo logos, characters, things like that, you know, in the venue. And it says, no, you are not permitted to use Nintendo game logos, character images, game images, music, or sound effects for community tournament promotions, venue decorations, or venue background music. And this right here is crazy too for Q3. What are some of the tournaments that are not permitted by these guidelines, right? So for profit tournaments, completely banned. Online tournaments that collect admission fees from spectators, nothing crazy there. That's just, again, kind of common sense. This is the one that gives me. Tournaments that make it a condition of entry in tournaments or viewing tournaments to subscribe to or follow a YouTube channel, an X account, or any other streaming channel or social media account, or subscribe to get a paid membership. In other words, what does that mean, right? That means, like, let's say I hit 1,000 subscribers, right? And I want to host a tournament that I'll call the Tuba Tussle, right? Which I've done in the past, right? And I want to host this tournament to celebrate hitting 1,000 subscribers. You know, my subscribers got me here. And I want to go ahead and reward them because, oh, they got me to 1,000, right? So when I open this up to my subscribers, all my subscribers can join. I can't do that. You basically cannot say, hey, you have to subscribe to me. You can't say you have to follow me. I believe this might even bleed into other things as well. I mean, it really just says any social media account. That could mean lots of different things. You know, how sometimes on StartGG it'll say like join this Discord server, or it'll say follow this person on Twitter or whatever. You just can't do that anymore. It's just not allowed. Tournaments in which participants are paid a performance fee or other expenses. Guessing that means when tournaments fly out top players sometimes, or participants. I don't think that would really affect commentators, but I think that mostly affects, like, you know, when tournaments fly out, like, you know, bigger players and things like that. Kind of sounds like that's not going to be allowed anymore. Tournaments that receive goods or money from third parties, such as sponsors. Yep, so sponsors are not allowed, sorry. And of course, the one that I've been seeing all over Twitter, tournaments involving the sale of food, beverages, or merchandise. Yeah, it's not going to be allowed. I'm sorry. You have to go 12 hours without eating, I guess. I mean, that kind of, like, when you think about it, right? It's like how some venues it says like no outside food or drinks allowed, and then you go in there and like what, you can't buy stuff because you're not allowed to be somewhere involving the sale of food, beverages, and merchandise. You know, no more attorney merch, nothing like that. I guess no more. I'm gonna skip over some of this, but here's another fun fact right here. You are not permitted to use Nintendo game titles or character names in the names of your community tournament. So Super Smash Con, no more of that. Other tournaments like that, just not gonna be a thing anymore. We gotta change the names, I guess. I don't know. Cool. Here's my favorite one right here. For all my content creators, those of us that are, you know, maybe bad at the game and can't really compete like myself. Basically, you know, you can still make your content, right? You can upload your videos, you can live stream, you can do all those wonderful things about these tournaments. However, those revenue limits we talked about earlier, the 5,000, the 10,000 over the span of a year, basically, you know, you can't really earn past that. So if you're uploading videos and you know, tournament footage like we talked about earlier, and the video pops off and, you know, oh boy, I made 10K on it, well, you might as well just go ahead and make it unlisted because you're not allowed to earn more money than that. And at this point in the video, you might be wondering, what do we do about bigger tournaments, right? What do we do about the tournaments that have more than 200 people, the major tournaments? You know, we haven't heard anything about this. What do we do? You want to host a large tournament with more than 300 participants in an online tournament, or more than 200 participants in an in-person tournament. What do you do? Well, currently, Nintendo does not grant permission for individuals to organize tournaments with more than 300 participants in an online tournament, or more than 200 in an in-person tournament. They do, however, appreciate our understanding. And if you would like to organize a tournament that exceeds that cap, please consider dividing it into blocks as described in Q12. Okay, what's Q12? All right, so this is Q12. This explains the block system here, right? These guidelines permit a community tournament to be divided into blocks hosted by a single organizer, as long as the total number of participants per day does not exceed 300 for online, 200 for in-person. For example, in a tournament organized by a single organizer, if there are 100 participants in Block A, 150 in Block B, and 80 in Block C, then that means hosting Block A and Block B tournaments on the same day is not allowed, because you cannot have more than 200 people competing in a single day. But you can host Block A on Saturday, Block B on Sunday, Block C on Monday, and maybe, you know, a separate bracket on Tuesday. And then Wednesday we can host grand finals, and by Thursday we'd probably, you know, I don't know, be dropped from school for not showing up at that point. Can school clubs or neighborhood associations host community tournaments under these guidelines? Man, here's the thing, you know, if you got your tournaments running by your lemonade stands, you better watch out, because here's the thing. School clubs are organizations. However, they may conduct competitions without requiring a license, as long as the following conditions are met. Participation in the tournament will not be open to the public, and the participations will be limited to the members of the school club. The tournament can be a standalone head-to-head competition between up to 2 schools, but will not involve 3 or more schools, and the tournament will not serve for ranking or qualification for a later tournament or championship. So that kind of sounds like, you know, all the progress we made with like collegiate circuits, high school circuits, and things like that. It almost sounds like that's kind of in the trash by now. I think I'll have to contact my local neighborhood association to see if they're going to be in compliance with this rule here, but I don't know, man. It's not looking good. Like, what does that even mean, neighborhood association? Like, what? I don't even know. Anyways, Q14 kind of describes how we are going to get those larger events. Basically, you have to submit a separate application to Nintendo to obtain permission to conduct the game tournament prior to announcing a tournament. This is gonna be interesting. Again, you know, on paper this sounds like a great idea, right? Just make things official, go through the organization, blah blah blah, you know, no problem, get it approved, host the tournament, bam, you know, everything's all good to go. However, once again, the relationship with Nintendo and the Smash community in general has been very rocky over the years, especially as of recently. So I could see this going pretty badly. We'll just have to see. With this application will be available in early November. We're just gonna have to see, honestly. We're gonna have to see if things have changed, if Nintendo's legit like, hey, we'll sign off on it. But it kind of sounds like they have to approve everything, and if there's something that they don't like, then you know, it almost kind of, I'm not gonna talk about the whole Panda thing, but it almost kind of sounds like we're kind of reverting back to that, except Nintendo's like, hey, yeah, we actually can control everything because it's like our games. That's kind of what it sounds like so far. This talks about illegal tournaments, violating the law, blah blah blah. One of those things that I'm not trying to find out about, right? You know, I don't know, man. Shout out to the TOs, honestly, especially those of them that are doing everything possible to make these events still happen, because not only do you have to jump through hoops, but you got to be willing to take some risks. And yeah, I don't know if I'm doing all that, so shout outs to them, man. What exactly are prohibited items that cannot be used as prizes? Legal stuff, gambling stuff, political. I mean, it's pretty much all kind of self-explanatory. I don't really see anything here as crazy unless I'm missing something. Nintendo, of course, can cancel whatever they want, and that's kind of about it. So as far as that goes, anything that is happening, you know, towards the end of this year is safe. Nothing is happening, nothing's getting canceled. We're good to go. And then tournaments announced before the date of the release of these guidelines that will be conducted in 2024 or later, you will be required to make a separate application to obtain permission, right? So that could probably complicate some events for next year, I would imagine. What do we have next year? Genesis, we have whatever Luminosity tournaments next year. There's lots of things, so you know, if those were to get denied, I don't know, that'll probably affect thousands of people. So, but does Nintendo care? Probably not. But yeah, that's basically the guidelines right there. And yeah, and, you know, it's looking rough. I mean, here's the thing, right? Competitive Smash will always be around. You know, if nothing else, right? People will always be able to play the games, right? Like, they're not, they can't, like, you know, break into your house and take the game away, right? So the game's always going to be out there. People are always going to be playing the game. It just seems like this is the biggest setback that we've had for Smash, honestly, ever, because, you know, we've had stuff like Evo, but that kind of just affected Evo, which, you know, caused setbacks, you know, later on for other things. But this right here is setting back Smash as a whole. I mean, Melee, like, what do you do with that? You know, like you could only play Melee like online by doing it through, you know, emulation and things like that, and it's basically saying that is not allowed. So there's really not much you can do about that, right? As far as hosting online tournaments, and you know, in person, it's just, I don't know, it's rough because it affects, obviously it's a Nintendo games as a whole or whatever. It's looking rough, to be honest. As far as Smash goes, I personally haven't been going to a lot of stuff recently. Like the last thing I went to was LTC, not this one, but the most recent one. But yeah, I'm kind of just gonna see how this plays out. You know, I'll be posting updates if anything crazy happens. I feel like we're gonna get some kind of announcement here soon again. I don't think they're just gonna drop this and leave it. I think with all the community backlash, we're gonna hear something. Again, I do have a video talking about the whole Evo situation. Highly recommend you check that out. Put a lot of time into that one. Made it kind of a while ago, but I really went into depth about the whole cancellation, the whole relationship with Nintendo. So that's real good insight if you guys don't know the whole history behind, you know, Smash and Nintendo with that. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let me know if this is the end for Smash, or if you think this is just, you know, a little stepping stone, and we're gonna get into something else, maybe a new game, who knows. I'll keep posting Smash content, of course, that's not gonna go anywhere, but I think I'm gonna start transitioning into some more Pokemon stuff. If you guys are interested in that, let me know that in comments as well. Just something else I've kind of been into where I like making content for that as well. You know, with we're gonna have to see how this affects tournaments, is what I'm trying to say, right? Because I feel like a lot of my content is kind of over, you know, tournament recaps, that kind of stuff. And if I'm not able to do that, then I'm not able to do it, right? Obviously, if the tournaments happen, I can still do it, but we'll just have to see how this whole thing plays out, you know. I'll be checking for updates, that's for sure, and I'm sure everybody else will. If you want to check out this whole entire thing, like the English version, because this is the one dropped by Nintendo America, I'll have it linked in the description below, so you can check out the whole thing. Definitely good stuff to read in here. There's, well, mostly bad stuff to read, but it's good to read through it, just to kind of get the whole picture and a full understanding of everything that's going on. And yeah, if you have any questions about what any of this stuff means, you know, if you don't understand something, go ahead and ask me or check online. I mean, there's so much information going around. A lot of this stuff is misinformation, of course. And again, like, this is just my perception of everything, right? I'm kind of explaining how I'm reading this stuff, right? Maybe I'm interpreting it wrong. So maybe some of the stuff I read here actually means something else. Who knows? But you can read it for yourself and form your own opinion. So yeah, I'm sure we'll get something else here soon from Nintendo. Let me know again in the comments if you enjoyed the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. And yeah, I'll catch you guys next time. Hopefully we'll still be talking about Smash, right? Hopefully. See you guys then.